Hello and welcome to another recorded training session for RPMS EHR. My name is Katie Johnson and I am the EHR Integrated Care Coordinator at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. Today we are going to cover the basics of the Integrated Problem List, or IPL. Time for my disclaimer. In all of these recordings, the database that I am using is a scrambled training database. It contains no real patient information. The data may look real, but it is not. So here we go with the IPL today. This is a major component, as you know, for managing the patient. It's a living, breathing component, just like many of the others, but you're adding to it, taking away, trying to keep it updated, to have a good solid problem list for the patient, and also to be able to see the history of problems that this patient has had over time. This is among the first iterations of the problem list, and there are continually taking ideas and trying to incorporate ways to make it better. So if you have ideas or suggestions, please submit them through the RPMS feedback page, and hopefully we'll start seeing just more and more sort of bells and whistles and things to make this better as we go. The first thing that you'll see here is your full integrated problem list, and you probably, depending on how your EHR is set up, if this is scrunched down and you can't really see the whole thing, you might want to talk to your CAC about giving this some more real estate so that you can see the full problem. It probably needs, like in this example, almost its own full tab here, it's also next to the visit diagnosis, and that's that's pertaining to this particular visit that you're working on. The integrated problem list is particular to the patient and not necessarily particular to a visit. But those two components go hand in hand because you choose your visit diagnoses from your integrated problem list. If it's not on the integrated problem list, it cannot be a visit diagnosis, or a purpose of visit is the other common thing that we call things that go in the visit diagnosis box. So the first thing you may notice, and hopefully by this point, this is February of 2016. Hopefully you're not running into this very much anymore because we have had the integrated problem list for several months now. But you may still run across a problem that has an asterisk by it. If it has an asterisk, that means that it has not yet been converted from an ICD-9 code over to SNOMED, and SNOMED is the terminology that the integrated problem list uses and that is required for several certification pieces, and it was the decision. It's a common data language across actually the whole world. It's not even specific to the United States. So that's the underlying coding that the integrated problem list will be in, but it also then can be mapped to ICD-10 and things like that to help with coding. But the integrated problem list speaks the SNOMED language. And so this conversion happened when we converted to ICD-10 on October 1st. Any problem that was in ICD-9 got an asterisk by it and then has to be converted. In this example, there aren't any problems like that, and I don't believe, hopefully, that you're seeing very many of them, but if you are, you can convert it by clicking on it and then saying that you're ready to convert it, and it'll help you choose a new problem that's in the SNOMED language. And also, so you know, if you have an asterisk by it, it cannot be used as a visit diagnosis. So that's why most things have probably been converted by this point, because if they were used since October 1st as a purpose of visit, then they would have had to be converted. And also I think a lot of sites have just systematically tried to convert all the problems as they see them, as they see the patients anyway. Okay. In this presentation, we're just going to cover the basics. There can be a lot said about the integrated problem list and how to use it, and I hope to do some more recordings about some of the finer points or the tips and tricks about things that can help you use the integrated problem list in the most efficient way. But today I'm just going to cover the basics: how to add, how to edit, how to use as a visit diagnosis, things like that. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that there is a status column, and also the status that you can see up here in the blue section. If you are finding, one of the big complaints is that the problem list gets very, very long because everything gets added to it. And on the one hand, that's an advantage of it. On the other hand, that's a disadvantage of it. But currently, you can control what shows up here by unclicking or clicking the categories, or excuse me, the status here. And there are more enhancements coming to this functionality, so this will continue to get better so that things can be filtered out, particularly things like this top one here, chart. This is your chart review diagnosis, which gets used as we know, but doesn't really need to be necessarily seen right up front on the problem list. So there will be a new category for that in the future. The second thing, I just wanted to point out all the columns. There's onset date, priority, the provider narrative. This can be very helpful. The comments as well. The past history, the pregnancy, inpatient, whether it can be used as a POV for this visit or not, and then the ICD code. And as a note on the ICD-9 codes, I don't want to get into too much debate or anything here, but just to point out, not every problem on the problem list is going to be mapped directly to an ICD-10 code. The unknown or the unmapped codes for ICD-10 are the ZZ.999. We want to minimize these if possible, but it is not possible to completely eliminate them. And also we want the providers choosing the most clinically appropriate item for the problem list, and not to have the ICD mapping. That should not be the driving force, for the sole driving force about what problem you choose to put on it. Obviously, we're a team here. We want to have good communication between the coders and the providers, and maybe this is where pick lists can come in to play big time. There are things like that. Like I said, this can be a rather lengthy conversation just in itself, but I just wanted to point out that you can see the ICD code here, and there will be ones that are unmapped that'll have these 999 codes. So again, the problem list is a place for the provider to document what is going on with the patient. It is not necessarily a primary coding tool. That's what the coders do as part of their job on the back side when they're doing the coding of the visit, with all the good communication back and forth about what they need in order to justify a certain code and things like that. So just open communication, open communication. So here we go. If there are, a couple other things I wanted to point out. These little blue plus signs, these can be great. If you click on it, it gives you more information, and this is where it can show the most recent or all of the extra things that have been entered related to this problem. So this can be very powerful to track a problem over time, to be able to see things like the goal notes, the patient instructions or care plans that may have been given, visit instructions, care plan activities. So there can be a lot of information here, but also if you close it up, you don't need to see it unless you're really digging in on that problem. So it can fold up there and not see it on the surface of the problem list. So let me show you now how we've got a new problem that we need to add for this patient. Okay, to add a problem, there are a couple of different ways. One way is to simply go straight to the Add button, and it will bring up this search box. This box here is where you type in what it is that you're looking for. And this takes a little bit of getting used to because the SNOMED language is a little bit different. But as you learn it, you'll start to find things that, kind of patterns, and kind of see how it is written. Let's put today some seasonal allergies on here. And then I'm going to click on the red box with the 3 dots to search. And I happen to get a very short list right up front. But as you can see, sometimes you get a whole list of things to choose from that are very specific. And also as you see things, if you click on this plus sign, sometimes there are more options that might fit what you are looking for. Also, there are different, if you're not finding what you're looking for, some tips to widen your search can be to flip over and use the synonym by clicking this button and searching again. Also, if you get a ton of results and you want to narrow them down, this is what this does, how many results it's going to show you. If you want it to show more, you can click on the 50 or 100 or 200 or even all. And then we have an IHS set of SNOMED. And we also have a few that maybe haven't been pulled into our specific set, but you can search all SNOMED by clicking that button too. But probably not as often that you're having to use that, especially as we keep pulling more and more over. There are monthly updates to this, so let me show you what will happen if maybe I just type allergy here. And let's search again, and I'll just search the IHS one here. Here we go. So as you can see, we've got lots and lots of results, very specific items. I opened it up to 100 to see and search again and see if I get even up to 100 results or maybe even more if I clicked on the all or the 200. So you may get in there and realize, whoa, this is way too broad. I just want seasonal allergies, hay fever type stuff. So let me go ahead and put the seasonal part back in there. Click on IHS SNOMED to search again. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to select it, or highlight it, and then hit select. And then we get dropped into this box that has a bunch of information that I can enter, or not at the time. If I just need to get it in there and I don't have a lot of other detail I want to add, I don't have to. But basically, the more information you can get in here, the better documentation you have, the better you can help out your coders as well, and other providers that might be seeing this patient, things like that. First of all, if I want to use this as a POV, I have this checkbox right here. I can also designate whether or not I want it as my primary POV. This provider text can be very helpful. It is what, I'll put something in here, but to show you, it is what shows up to the right side of this pipeline when you see in your final problem list view. So I'm jumping over here to the side for a minute. On this problem, left side is the provider text. So that can be very helpful because it's seen, boom, right up front, right on the problem list without digging any further. So I'm going to say this happened in the spring for this patient. Actually, some of things are a little bit different here on the qualifiers and episodicities. Oh, and sorry, I skipped the status right here. You can, it's defaulted to episodic, and that makes sense for this one, but if for whatever reason, if you needed to change that, you can right here. And some of these options will change based on what you have selected as your SNOMED term. Like for injuries, for example, it knows that you have an injury selected, so these qualifiers and things will change a little bit to reflect that. Clinical course here, again, just another place to document extra information that can help really quantify the problem. Date of onset. This can be, we can go back, say this has been since, a couple of years ago, say. Okay, or you can click now as an easy way too. Comment section also shows, I'm going to move this for a second, also shows right up front on the problem list. Now the comments are specific to the problem, but not necessarily specific to the visit. So same thing here on the provider text. That is something that I want to comment on for this problem, but things that are specific to the visit, I'm going to put more down in the goal notes, care plans, visit instructions if I have anything here. So I'm just going to type in some comments here. Okay, so to document some things down here about the care plan, I'm going to click on the add visit instructions, care plans, goal notes, and you can type in here if there's some, if say this were the problem for the common cold or something that you're doing a lot of, that you have kind of a set of visit instructions, an ankle sprain or something like that, those actually can also be templated. That's what this little button is, so that you can write a little note just like you can on your other, this one doesn't have a template associated with it, but you can ask your CAC and work with your CAC and say, okay, here's the visit instructions that I always give out for this type of problem. Let's see if we can get it on here. Save you some typing. But in this case, I'm just going to say, I'm going to put in some visit instructions. I don't really have any goals, but in this case, the goals here are from the provider perspective. So the goal that the provider has for that patient is what this is meant for, not necessarily what the patient's goal is. We have a separate component if you're tracking, say a patient wants to lose weight and their goal is to start walking 10 minutes a day. Well, that's the patient's goal, and that can go in a different spot. This is meant that the provider's goal, so say the goal, the goal that you are working on with the patient is, say for diabetes, to get the A1C under a certain number, or get the blood pressure controlled, or whatever it might be. Care plans, again, and also the same, I should note that this little box here means that you can template any 3 of these sections, or all 3. Care plans, say, treat symptoms with saline, washes, and stay indoors during high pollen days, something like that. Now we have the patient education section here. Maybe you gave them a handout on controlling allergies, or whatever, any of these things, and you can document more than one. This should look familiar if you've done education before, or as we saw on the wellness tab when we were adding patient education, same fields here. And I mentioned that this was another place, and you can see how this is an easy place to enter the patient education, because you're right here dealing with the problem, documenting what you need to document, and it's right here without having to visit any other tabs to document the patient education. And there's even another component yet here for some things that you can document here, that when to follow up. These are just some items, some standard things as well, that you can look through and see if any of them are pertinent to the problem that you're working on. And now I've got all that in there, I'm going to select OK. And just so you know, it is going to ask you to sign a couple of items. You can wait and sign everything all at the end, or you can do it as you go. And I mean everything at the end. I mean, if you had orders and notes and other things elsewhere in EHR, you could sign them all at the end, or you can do it right now when it popped up. So now we have, again, we aren't even out of, that was just dealing with this section, the care plan info. And now it's asking us to review, make sure we like what we've got here, and click save. And now I have added a new problem to the problem list, and because I checked the use as POV box, it also popped up down here in my visit diagnosis. And you can see on this column here that you can glance at it and see which things that you have used as a POV today as well, and it's got the little red check mark there. And it's got the little blue plus sign because I did add some of those notes to it down here. But without looking further, you can see here where I added the provider comments, and then also the comment section here, or excuse me, you can also see the comment section here. So now, just to get your thought process going on this as well, now you can see, this has been going on for a while, so let's maybe look at this problem. So say we've got a different visit, or even the same visit, same day. So let's see what's going on with this patient today with their hypertension. So I want to address their hypertension today. I can click on here to see what has been going on. Okay, I can read those, see if they're helpful at all. And then let's say, okay, well, what did we do today for the patient on their hypertension? So instead of, I don't need to add a whole new problem again, I just need to edit the one that's there and say, okay, we addressed the POV, we addressed the hypertension today. I can change anything in here that I need to. I can add things. So add comments as we go. I can add again any of these visit instructions and I'll just, tack onto it. I could change the provider text if I wanted to, and I'm going to do that so that I'll show you how the system still captures that and how that can help you kind of update the problem as it's going. So this was their, I probably in this case truly wouldn't want to change the, it's saying that it's hypertension secondary to a drug, and the provider text is showing us what drug it is. So maybe we found out it's another drug as well. I mean, this is kind of nonsense clinically, maybe, perhaps, but anyway, just to illustrate an example, we found out there's a second drug that causes this problem for him. So I updated it, used it as a POV, maybe added a comment, but as you can see, so in a case like this, you found out that there was something more to the problem, but I can't add the exact same problem again. So we've already had a problem on there, that hypertension secondary to drug. So, but we just found out that there's additional information about that. Well, I don't want to add a whole new problem to the problem list that would say again, hypertension secondary to drug, and then, then go on to add that it was acetaminophen. I'm just editing, the problem is still there. The essential problem is that they have hypertension secondary to a drug. I'm just adding information to it and updating what I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And as you can see, those updates were reflected here. I also want to show you, I haven't talked about yet, what happens if you double click on a problem. It gives you the history of changes to the problem. So we can see that right here today, I edited it, and now we can see that it now says aspirin and acetaminophen in the previous value where it just said aspirin. So as you can think of this as a way to manage kind of your ongoing problems. And just a way to point out as well, you may see under the edited section, you may see names that you don't recognize as clinical providers or anything like that, but just so you know what is happening is that when these monthly updates that I mentioned, they bring in new SNOMED terms and also updated mapping, so things that were not previously mapped to an ICD-10. As we get more things mapped, it pulls those in. So these names here are probably your IT person, your site analyst, your CAC, whomever installed that update, it's going to show as edited the problem. But that's okay. All they really did was install the update, and it checked. And in this case, it looks like it did bring in a new mapping, so somewhere along the way. So that's nice. But don't worry that your IT people are actually getting in there and messing with your documentation, because that's not what's going on. So again, if you want to look back and see what's going on with the problem, this is yet another way to track what has happened or who entered what if you get confused on it. And it captures everything here, like we had the education, treatment regimens, everything associated that we saw in those boxes as options to associate with the problem. So So those are the basics of adding it, just the kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But really what we want to heavily encourage is, if you do need to add a new problem, is that you use the pick list. And this is, again, an open communication between your coders and billers and your CAC and your providers to make the most meaningful types of pick lists that you can. And again, more enhancements are coming about ways to make the pick lists better as well, and ways to organize them and things like that. Right now we're still mostly just looking at alphabetical lists, but as you can see, you can make pick lists specific to a disease state, or even to a provider, just all sorts of things that can happen here, and different ways to kind of group things, group the problems. As you can see here, I clicked on this one called Elaine Callahan, and it's got headings, and so it's a little bit easier on the eye when I'm looking for something. And the reason these are helpful is because you've gotten feedback between the provider and the CAC and saying, here are the things that I really use a lot, and I don't want to have to go typing and searching for them each time. I go straight to my pick list, I know it's there, and I can grab it from there. The other advantage is that when you're deciding what to add to these pick lists, then the CAC can also work with the coders and say, okay, what is the best one to put here? Like these two are really similar. I see this one is the one that is mapped to an ICD-10 and this one isn't. Let's talk with the provider and say, do you have a preference for which one of these to use? And the provider might say, no, actually this one that's unmapped is actually the more accurate thing that I really want on here. Yeah, that could be one result. Or they could say, yep, no, either of those is fine. Let's go with the mapped item so that it makes it more clear for the coder to have a mapped purpose of visit. So I'm just going to click on one here, and then as you can see here, the button Save as Problem, and then there are certain pick lists where you can turn on to do the Save it as a problem on my problem list, and also go ahead and use as a POV straight from here to save another click. It's not activated on this particular one, so it's grayed out, but I'm just going to click Save as Problem, and here we are dropped back into that exact same dialog box that I have the ability to add whatever I need to about this problem. And as you can see, well, I didn't add anything there, and it still took it as a problem, added as a POV. So that's a problem with very little, basically no extras attached to it, and that's okay as well, versus our other one that we were playing around with where we added a bunch of extra information. Both of them got on there, both of them got listed as a POV. So I believe that's the quick and dirty basics of the integrated problem list. There are so many nuances and different ways to address these, and like I said, I hope to do another, maybe call it more of an advanced IPL recording. It has, once you're kind of used to the basics of how to add, how to edit, maybe we have a few extra little tips and tricks or real world examples of things that commonly trip people up, and maybe some suggestions on how to document them. The best thing I can say is try to have communication between your CAC, your provider, your coders, any of the other also disciplines in your clinic that are involved. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.